Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Worldwide Nets podcast with your host, as always, Chris and Joel. Welcome, everybody. We have some guests here today. We have Manny and Dre joining us today, as we are now live on Twitch. This time around, we'll be live on YouTube in the future whenever we do like some of these bigger recordings. And hello, Saint. Welcome, unexpected guest.
What up?
What up, Saint? Unexpected guest. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go to the game with my son, so I thought I'd hop in and say what's up.
Oh, of course. You're always welcome in here, bro.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I might. How long you guys gonna be going for?
Probably a few hours. We're gonna at least me and Joel. Whenever like people are welcome to jump in and out whenever they feel like it. But me and Joel are probably gonna go for a few hours at least, and then we're gonna cut it down to a few episodes.
Nice. It's crazy to hear voices and see face, see Dre.
What up, Saint?
It's crazy. But are you live right now? Just talking.
We're live on Twitch. Yeah, we've been live for 15 minutes.
Like 30 seconds.
Nice.
No, we've been.
I don't. Okay.
Hello, bro, because I'm gonna be moving around. But once I get in the car, I'll hop in.
Absolutely, you're more than welcome to.
What's up, Saint?
What up, guys? Enjoy. Yeah, I'll be back, man. I didn't know how this was working, but yeah, I'll be back.
Of course.
Yeah.
Do you
See you
think?
in a bit.
Enjoy the game, man. All right, that was an unexpected guest. Hadn't heard back from him, but yeah, let's get into it. So we've had a very tumultuous season off rip. Steve Nash getting fired, Kyrie Irving getting suspended for anti-Semitic, whatever that was about. I have my personal beliefs on it. I've done some research on it. And, I'll talk about that later. But for now, I want to let Dre and Manny introduce yourselves. Whichever one want to go first.
You first, Dre. Oh, you sure?
Yeah.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Manny. I'm a diehard Nets fan from back in the 90s. Big Kyrie fan. Usually, if I hear any news or I find something out, I try to express that information, even though it's not 100% accurate. But just want to say what's going on. And also, since you guys are big fans of the sport, regarding any sport, you can always find me on the sports hit list. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all of that. We talk all types of sports. We interact. I even have I'm part of a show, one half of a show called The Fan Zone, where you give your fans perspective. We want that raw emotion when it comes to your team, witnessing your team, witnessing a crazy play, a game winner, a buzzer beater, whatever sport it is, whether it's hockey, baseball, football, soccer. We got the World Cup coming up, so I know they're doing extra specials. But overall, I'm grateful to be here. Sometimes I join you guys in the net spaces after the games or before the games. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So if you haven't started therapy, definitely start therapy. No matter what stigma it has. It helps tremendously.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. And Dre, feel free to introduce yourself as well, bro.
What's good, guys? My name is Dre. Live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Long time Nets fan. Season ticket holder. Kyrie, KD fan. Obviously, I'm more of a Nets fan than I am players or whatever. I go back to the Kenny Anderson, Drazen Petrovic.
That's a long
Derek
time.
Coleman days. Yeah. Those were my guys. But I also kind of rose to a little bit of Twitter infamy last year before they reinstated Kyrie to play last year. I was the one yelling at Mayor Adams to let him play in the park that Sunday morning on March 3rd. And
yeah, I remember that. I told Joel about that before you guys hopped in here.
Yeah. So that was something that was like totally unexpected, and I thought it was hilarious. But the funny thing is like I talked to one of my boys. He's a big Nets fan too, and he's like, a lot of people owe Kyrie an apology for all the COVID stuff. So it's like you're starting to see people that weren't allowed to work get back pay again, you know what I mean? Because even the rule that kept him out, they found to be unconstitutional. So it's like, it's funny how they just kind of moved on to the next drama with him before they actually addressed the COVID stuff, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And we have a lot to discuss with the whole Kyrie drama because there's been a lot. But I want to start off with the beginning of the season and hear you guys' takes on how it looked and what you think could have been done differently.
So, well, let me start by saying that, my expectations were high to start the season. I thought that our roster was good enough, even with potentially missing some big man depth, like at the center position, and missing a ball handler. And because we had a mediocre coach at best, I think a bad coach, but mediocre at best. Despite all that, I thought, that we could be top two in the East and that we could be like a top seven, top eight defense. That was I was thinking. So y'all can imagine how mortified and disgusted I was by the start of the season, right? Like not just when you're not winning games, you can lose games, right? But the way we were losing in games, and I didn't want to have another season of no defense, right? And we're talking about games of 130 points, 128 points, 124. Like I was really disgusted with the start of the season and disappointed because, like I said, I thought we could overcome the lack of coaching, but I don't know what happened. But the start was awful. Let's just be honest.
Absolutely, it was not pretty, especially the loss that we suffered in the first game to the New Orleans Pelicans. That was
that was brutal.
Some serious deficiencies.
Really bad.
Me too.
The feeling in the stands that day was just like somebody just like kicked us in the nuts. Like it was just like everybody was like, "What is happening?" Like to see it up close and to see the body language. And I've never been a fan of Nash. Like I was open to the idea in the beginning, but like right away you could see that like he was in over his head. And it's like, to say that people should have respected him because he was a great player, I just thought was laughable because it's like, it doesn't always translate to be a great coach. And you could tell
Absolutely not.
You could tell like he was more of a cheerleader than anything. And it was just like, if we had like a halfway decent person, look at Jacques Vaughn, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Jacques Vaughn's been doing an amazing
coach,
job.
Right? Because he's organized and he has a system, right? And you can tell that like when somebody gets beat on defense, like there's somebody there to like back that person up and to rotate over it. And then if the ball moves again, then somebody like, you can tell that there's some organization there. And it's just like they respect that,
Absolutely. What are your takes on it, Manny?
I was just like Dre said. I was at the game one against the Pelicans, and what bothered me more was it just reminded me of Game 4 last year. I was there at the game, and they literally did the exact same play multiple times, and nothing changed. Whereas they did a high pick and roll with Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, and then we got Patty Mills on them, and it's like. How are we gonna like? You got to put KD on him, or then you put Kyrie on him, and then it's like it's still a mismatch regardless. Like those they're two young studs, and honestly, coming into the season, we were like, all right, we need revenge. I had that. Shout out to Saint, Saint. I came up with this.
Just in here just 5 minutes ago, by the way. He'll probably be in here again later, but continue.
Yeah. I started off with the hashtag optimistic revenge.
I saw that.
Where I'm trying to be as positive, and then it was like revenge. Every game we play, every team we play, we're going full force. We're giving it all, whether we win or lose. No blowouts, no nothing. And here, the first game of the season, we get blown out. And it's like what bothered me more was they put Ben Simmons on Zion right away. And it's like this man didn't play for a whole year. Why is he guarding the best player on their team?
I think
it's like
he hadn't played for a year either, so it was like it wasn't Zion hasn't been
he ain't missing a step though.
No, Zion went right back to being Zion, but then Zion also didn't have the same. Not to take anything away from him, but he also didn't have the same issues coming back into it, and dealing with the mental health that Ben went through last season, and then also dealing with back surgery. That's a lot of issues that he needs to overcome, and he still hasn't overcame that yet, as we've seen. But he's moving into being himself, ever so slowly.
I'm glad they
that's like
and easing him in.
Absolutely,
and that's solid. That's a
He's got to
solid
earn it
thing.
back.
I like the
you know
fact
what I
that he's
mean?
coming off the bench.
I was about to
Yeah,
get
he's
into
gotta
that
earn it.
as well with the whole with Jock Vaughn, and as you mentioned, Dre with Steve Nash. Just the what is it, 4 or 5 game sample size we have of Jock Vaughn now. He's done an amazing job, especially with
Oregon.
bringing Ben off the bench. That in itself, having him not play alongside Claxton as much, even though I love both players and I am a huge advocate for Nicholas Claxton winning most improved player this season. But I think that was a good call from Jock Vaughn's side and say, you know what, we're gonna bring you in off the bench, bring you in limited minutes instead of what Steve Nash did with Ben coming back from a serious injury and all this other stuff, and this effectively spending 2 years off the court, and having him, just come in and play 30+ minutes from the get-go. That was never a good move.
No, and that's also one of the reasons why I would discuss it with the sort of the season is like Nash clearly wanted to throw Ben into in the deep end, right? He thought, okay, if I throw Ben in the deep end, he's going to be forced to swim, right? But you shouldn't underestimate not only that he hadn't played, an NBA game, a real game in more than 400 days, but he also is dealing with mental issues, right? Like, so, you have to take a look at the whole story. So throwing him into the deep end is just not, the way to go. And that's also why I was so disgusted with, the way that we started the season, right? Like, because we went back so basically during the preseason, we seemed, to turn into a princess, but we turned back into a pumpkin. Do you remember these last 2 preseason games where there was ball movement, right?
The last 2 preseason games looked absolutely beautiful.
Exactly, you beat a Bucks team that wanted to win the game. Like the Bucks wanted to win that game, right?
Giannis was in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Giannis and Drew Holiday was in the fourth quarter going up against Cam Thomas and Day'Ron Sharpe, and I don't remember if Kessler Edwards was in, but David Duke Jr. Like all the Alondas was playing in that game as well.
Exactly, and then we turned right back into a pumpkin. Like the start of the season was terrible, really. Like,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean.
Let's also bring up
the fact that. Go ahead.
No, Dre, go ahead.
No, it wasn't even that they threw him into the deep end. Like he was guarding the other team's best player. Like they just thought he was going to automatically be the All NBA defender that he was day one. Like why is he guarding Zion? Like why is he? I forgot what other game it was. It's like he fouled out in maybe 18 minutes of play because it's like. You're putting him in harm's way on every play. Like you're putting, you know what I mean? Like you're forcing him to be.
You're setting him up
what
for
he used to be. Yeah, and it's like that was one of my real big problems with Nash is that he had his guys, right? Like he wouldn't play Blake Griffin last year for a month, right? But all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's throw Blake Griffin back into the deep end in the playoffs, and let's hope he produces, and then. Why was Cam Thomas on the bench, like, in the first 4 games of the year? Like, whether we had Kyrie or not, it's like, why are we not coming off the bench with some firepower and, like, mixing it up? And, like, why isn't, this guy, Ben Simmons, able to orchestrate with the bench? Because that's where, like, he's going to go up against second-team players, guys that are, like, lesser players than him, but, like, it's more his game speed because of the absence that he's had. So, listen, good riddance, Nash. I love the fact that we were up 16 the other night. The lead goes down to 11, and Jacques Vaughn hits a timeout. He's like, he couldn't let them go on another run.
Absolutely, and that's one thing
Stop
I really
the
want
flow.
to commend.
Timeout.
Actually, that's one thing I really want to commend Jacques Vaughn on because we never had that in the 2 or 3 years we've had Nash. They would go on a 10, 15-point run, and then he would call a timeout. Like that's not good enough.
Yeah.
But Manny, you were gonna go ahead?
Oh no, Dre hit it on the head. The whole thing with Cam Thomas being on the bench, and it's like, why is he on the bench? Why is David Duke Jr. getting more minutes than Cam Thomas? And it's like Cam Thomas is technically our 6th man. If you think about it, at that time, he was a spark for us.
Yes.
He was pretty much what Karis LeVert was when he was injury ridden, and he would come off the bench.
Absolutely.
Or even more old school name, Marshawn Brooks. If you want to bring him up, I loved Marshawn, but he came off the bench and did what he had to do. Unfortunately, he got screwed over in his career. But yeah, Cam Thomas. Everybody every day in the net spaces is like, "Where's Cam Thomas? Where's Cam Thomas?" And then you see on his IG he put free CT, and then
Yeah.
other people are saying free CT on the team, and because they're all like, "Wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
How's
Yeah,
Cam Thomas not even getting any burn?" And then he only comes in when we're up by like 40 points or whatever, and that only happened one time.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, a sighting, or we're getting smoked by 30 points. Then we're like, oh, hey, Cam, come get some shots up. Don't worry. Like, come on, man. The kid is a young kid. He's a promising young player. He can be all-star capabilities.
There's definitely
But
potential for it. Like,
oh
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
He's got a ceiling. He's got a high ceiling.
absolutely. And I would even
He can
go as
score. Like,
I'd even go as far as saying that someone like maybe not Kess as much, but I see potential in DDJ as well, and of course I see a lot of future potential in Nick with the way he's been performing this season so far.
Hmm.
But I also think, Dre, what you touch upon when it comes to respect, right? And I think it also shows sort of the lack of respect. Of course, some of the things that happened, like, Cam Thomas with the eye roll, and the free CT and certain likes on Twitter and whatnot. Of course, there might be partially immaturity as well. But I also think sort of like a lack of respect because with certain coaches, I don't think you do that kind of thing. Right, and I also, and I'm not a military guy. As in, I was never in the military, but my two oldest brothers were. They say like you salute the rank. You don't salute the soldier, the person. But why is that? Because the rank comes with a certain respect. It means that you did the work, you did the steps to achieve that rank, right? And Nash shouldn't do that, right? Like as a coach. Right, he was never an assistant. Like people been in the trench, like Willie Green, for example. People like Sam Cassell now. We have black assistant coaches who've been assistant coaches for decades and didn't get the chance that Nash gets. Right, and then when you don't have the respect because you didn't do the steps and you make strange decisions, people are going to call you out. People are going to roll their eyes. People are going to ask, why are you doing this? And like when Nick Nurse in Toronto, for example, he sometimes does weird high school defenses. But his players accept it because they know Nick Nurse is an elite coach. So when Nick Nurse comes with high school box and one janky defenses, they're like, okay, we're gonna do it because Nick knows what he's doing. I don't think that anyone believes that Nash knew what he was doing, right? So I think that's where the lack of respect comes from.
No, and
The
I got a
piggyback
better,
on that.
I'd
I got
even
a better
say,
saying
oh, go ahead.
that attitude reflects leadership, right? So, like, if you know your leader is janky, right? Like, what's your attitude going to be when you go, into games and in the locker room and even on social media, right? So, like, there's no respect or accountability there. Like, they knew he didn't get the job because he deserved it. Like, Ime should have gotten the job, right? Like, he a finalist at the same time as Nash? And hindsight being 2020, we can see who was the better coach and who should have been the hire there. But sorry, Miguel, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I just wanted to say that you could tell in the first couple games of the season the body language when Nash was coaching. You
Yeah.
could tell there were games that even people were speculating like, yo, are the Nets players like throwing the games to get
Yeah.
rid of Nash because he literally doesn't have any schemes. No,
Yeah.
nothing. Like you're telling me you had D'Antoni on your bench 1 year. You had Udoka. You have Jock Vaughn with you. You've had the experience. You were on the D'Antoni for almost a decade on the Suns. You
Yep.
didn't have a pick and roll in place for KD and Claxton or Kyrie. No, nothing.
No,
And it's
he
like
had an iPad with some random scheme said that was it, and he just sat on the sideline and clapped.
it was
Listen,
like he was
my
looking at
wife,
analytics.
my wife was sitting here watching the game, and she was like, "Yo, this is like Bel Air prep. Like, give the ball to Will. Like, that's the whole offense."
Absolutely.
She said that. We're sitting there watching the game, and then that's been like our running joke as we watch. What's the game plan in the fourth quarter? Get a ball to Will.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was just like, my wife, she grew up on the '90s Bulls, so she knows something about watching teams win. But like, she noticed that like early on, and it was just like, there was no game plan. Like, you
No,
could tell
absolutely not.
the reason why we would get cooked in the third quarter of games is because the other team's coach would adjust.
Yes.
We wouldn't make adjustments
Absolutely.
to those adjustments, and then the adjustments would never come. So it was just
Yes.
like an avalanche. It was like, my wife would be like, "Oh, here come the third quarter blues," and I'm sitting here like watching it unfold, and it's just like, yo, why aren't we adjusting? Like, you can tell that they're shutting KD down or they're trapping Kyrie, and there
Or
was
they're doing
nothing happening.
both, like, cause you see him switch, like, now it's your turn, now it's your turn, and then they'll trap Kevin Durant at the top of the key, or even at half court, and then he'll pass it on to Kyrie or something like that, and then they'll go double Kyrie after there's double Kevin, and they'll switch back and forth like that.
And the other players are just looking.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
like in a corner or something, just waiting for the ball. It was like you're playing 2K with your friends and you're playing
Yep.
rec or pro am, and it's like you have two people on one on each corner. Then you got one on the wing, and then you got the two ball handlers, and it's like, okay,
Yeah, you're just playing
so
hero
I'm gonna
ball.
just stay here. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna move. I'm just gonna watch them shoot the ball, and then we argue like, "Yo, get back on defense!" Like, why is this
Exactly.
guy wide open? And they're killing us on the transition.
And you can
And
see the
another thing
change
was,
now. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, oh no, you're right.
You can see now. You see Kevin going back door now, right? Like there was a pass that Ben Simmons was at the top. Guys are overplaying KD, and he just whipped it back on a back door. As soon as the guy turned his head, and it was a nice simple pass. And it was like that was the movement off the ball that we needed from the beginning. Like, why are you just parking in the corners? Why don't you switch corners? You know what I'm saying? And yeah,
Oh yeah, exactly.
But if you think about it, right? Like, if you look at Anthony Davis, he shot, I don't know, 20% from three last season, right? And then during the offseason, he tweets that he hasn't touched a basketball in months. Twitter killed him. What did he do? He meets up with Lethal Shooter and practices, shooting. He's not really improved this season, but at least he does something, right? Ime called Nash out during the playoffs. He said, like, we know that the Nets don't run any plays. Did Nash change anything after that?
No,
No,
not one thing.
absolutely not.
Like, Ime called him out. He said that we know that they don't run any plays. You should have some kind of reaction after that, but there's nothing, right? And that's good riddance. I'm sorry. I know he's a nice guy, Nash, but nope.
He was one of
Sorry.
my favorite players all time. I used to love watching him play. But when, he came to be our coach, it was just like it took him 2 months to figure out how the timeouts worked, man. And I just couldn't
or challenge.
or challenge, yeah. But I
just
like where we are now. Like right now, I like where we are now. We definitely need to get Kyrie back. It looks like that's happening.
absolutely
And
that should
like,
happen pretty soon.
By
Yeah.
this week coming, I believe they said that he might miss the 4-game road trip that we have currently.
Yeah. But when we come back, he'll I think he'll be back. And it's like now we need to get him into these good vibes that we've had, right? Like
Exactly.
you can see like KD is actually smiling. Like when I went to that first game and you saw him and I could look at him on the bench when he wasn't playing, his
He had his head down.
his body language was horrible.
Yeah.
And for the fact that he's like enjoying basketball, like the other guys are contributing, we've had like balanced scoring because of the movement, you know what I mean? Like KD still being KD because he has to be because we don't have Kyrie involved. But
But
getting Kyrie back in the fold.
and now we have bench scoring, which is a thing we've struggled with a lot as of like the last few years. Like bench scoring, we have Yuta Watanabe, we have Edmund Sumner's been starting these last few games, and all these other guys, and Cam Thomas and David Duke Jr. is given some good minutes. Not necessarily scoring that much, but he's been pretty good defensively. He's fouled a bit. We have Clax coming in and being a major factor on offense and defense. Even I know he's starting, but still we have so much potential on the bench as well. Like I don't really have many negative things to say about how the roster is constructed after we've gotten a new coach and you see everyone's buying into it.
Yeah, but that's the
I
thing.
have
Full disclosure. Go ahead, Dre.
I just have one problem. Like, listen, I love Patty, but Patty's a turnstile on defense, right? Like,
Absolutely.
when
He's just
they
not
do their
big
pick
enough.
and rolls, they target him, and whoever it is that has the ball, they're just gonna like attack him. And it's like I would really like to see. I love David Duke getting more minutes there. I would like to see even Cam taking more minutes from Patty because it's like if it's scoring that we need, like bump him up from 25 to like 35 minutes and like give him those minutes. So that's the only thing I would say about the roster construction and the bench and
I mean, of course, we still have some deficiencies. We're missing a backup big because Day'Ron Sharpe, as much as I love the guy, he's just not ready to play that backup center. He's not ready to come in and fill those 15, 20 minutes, and we've seen that very early on. And of course, a secondary ball handler would be great. That's not necessarily, or a primary ball handler even. That's not Ben Simmons, since he's just not ready for that yet. And that's not Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, because we both know we all know that they want to play off the ball as much as possible.
So I agree that we do have these deficiencies, and I have to take it up for Patty a little bit, because I heard Shannon Sharp say recently, that high draft pick, it isn't their fault, that they were a high draft pick, right? If they don't live up to what the team was hoping for. And I think it's sort of like with Patty, right? Patty's been put in situations that he shouldn't be. In San Antonio, he was playing less minutes. He was less prominent, and Pop had a way of hiding Patty, on defense, right? But again, we don't have the coaching, and I mean, Boston was living for that, for example, right? Like getting the mismatches, right? So if I'm an opposing coach, I'm like, okay, when Seth Curry is in, I'm going to put Seth Curry in the pick and roll. If Patty is in, I'm going to put him in a roll. And if both of them are in at the same time, then I'm going to feast. That's what I would do if I was being an opposing coach. So Patty plays hard. You can tell. Like, he tries so hard when he's fighting against a 7-footer, right? He tries.
He is in their body immediately. Like,
Exactly.
all the way up in their body. But he's just too short. That's the issue with Patty, because he has the heart. He has the grit. But he's just not big enough. That's the issue. That's the issue on
the thing that kills us though is that we play a lot of the small guys together.
Yeah,
right. Like
too much.
You know what I mean?
Too much.
Way too
much.
Like
how do we? So I've seen lineups where it's like Patty, Kai, and Seth.
Yeah. That was a big thing last season.
Yeah, and it was like I guess some of it was people in and out the lineup, injuries, COVID, or whatever. But this year, I would it was like I guess Seth came back a little later, but there were times where you would see Kyrie and Patty in at the same time, and it's like, with a 6'4" guy at the 3, once you start doing, and I hate the switching for the sake of switching, but when you have those two guys at, the 1 and the 2, you're gonna get caught out there, and it's like bad coaching.
Absolutely, but
also,
I do want to just point on one thing with switching, because from what I've seen so far, we're switching a whole lot less. We're staying home a whole lot more compared to the last couple seasons. The switching is heavily improved. But I'll let you go, Manny.
No, I was going to say, look at the defense the first time we played the Mavericks this year. And then look at the second game we played, when we played them away. Yeah. The defense was very different. And it could have gone either way. And people got mad KD missed his free throws, but superstars miss their free throws regardless.
It happens.
You can't blame him for that, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be there as close. So before I go, I just wanted to say, the ceiling is still high. Congrats to Jock Vaughn. I've said it in the spaces before where it's 2 years too late. Because if we were going to give Nash the job beforehand, you should have gave it to Jock Vaughn. Because I feel like Ime would have stood with us in the coaching staff.
Yep.
And things could have changed a lot different. I felt like we could have done a lot better. Who knows? Maybe we don't go for Harden. Maybe we keep the team that we currently had at that time.
And
we'd have
exactly.
And we'd have
that trade was overkill. It was overkill. Yeah.
Exactly. And with those guys, I love watching them play. It just sucks when they're not in a Nets uniform.
Absolutely.
Like I see them progressing.
I watch Cavs games just to watch Jared play.
Cavs are special, man. I'm happy for them and stuff. It just bothers me.
I'm definitely also one of the guys. Like, I'll sit down and watch a Cavs game just to watch Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, because it's
last night's game was really good.
It was.
That was a really good game yesterday.
I didn't catch last night's game because I had a bunch of stuff I need to do today, but I'm definitely gonna have to sit down and watch that.
Thanks for hopping in, Manny.
Oh yeah, by all means, I'll see if I can try to hop on before anything. But let's go Brooklyn.
Absolutely.
Take care, guys.
Cheers.
We'll see you around, Manny.
Thanks.
Wait a minute.
So let's crack on.
Dre, I wanted to ask you something, Dre.
Yeah.
So, full disclosure, I wasn't happy with Jacques Vaughn getting the job, and that is because I feel like we already discussed that if you're gonna give Chuck Fun the coaching job, you should have done it 2 years ago. That's what I feel strongly. And I felt that it was again someone Sean Marks hired that he knew, someone that he knows from the Spurs organization, someone who he considers a friend, and then not necessarily the best coach out there. Because at the end of the day, we will never know if we would have hired Ime 2 years ago, for example. If we would have had a conversation with Ty Lue, for example, who knows what the world would have looked like. So, were you happy with the Jacques Vaughn signing from the get-go?
Yes, because I knew that his coaching stint in Orlando, like that really wasn't his fault. Like that, you want to talk about dumpster fire, like that was a dumpster fire.
The whole team was a dumpster fire.
The whole team. That's what I'm saying. The organization, the front office, the whole thing.
That's even more of a dumpster fire than our front office is.
Yeah, absolutely. At least we're confident in terms of signing and acquiring star level players and filling out a roster, whatever. I do like Sean Marks. But I like it because Jacques Vaughn has been loyal. How many head coaches has he coached under when he was after he was our interim coach, right? So it's like he could have left and been an assistant somewhere else. He could have gone back to the Spurs. He could have gone Atlanta. They have Spurs ties. A bunch of GMs and coaches around the league have Spurs ties where he could have just gone and been an assistant. But he stayed here, and I think he likes it here in Brooklyn. So when he got the chance, it was like, okay, cool, I like that. I'm biased for everyone black, so I was obviously happy to see that a black man came in and took the job. Because honestly, I wanted Ime.
I think we all
when
wanted
he was
Ime.
the finalist. But doesn't Ime fall into Jacques Vaughn, friends of Sean Marks? Familial ties with the Spurs organization, the whole thing, right? So like,
yeah, I guess so. I haven't really thought of it that way, but
he came under Pop too. Like he was a Spurs guy too, so it's like played for them, came up under Pop, as an assistant.
Absolutely.
But when that happened, though, honestly, I did like the hire, but I thought it was the white flag. I thought it was this is the first domino to fall in KD getting traded.
I've heard
that was my initial.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot.
That was my initial thought.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of talks about that on Twitter and whatnot, and people are very concerned that this may be it. But if you look at just Kevin's body language after just the last few games, he seems very pleased with everything. And you saw the clip or you heard Christian Winfield whatnot say that you could hear the cheers after he got his first win as the head coach. You could hear the cheers from the court or the hallway, whatever. From the dressing room,
locker room.
Locker rooms, cheering for Jacques Vaughn. So I don't think we're at that point, and I mean that's just my opinion and how I look at it.
But that's what surprised me. That was just my initial thought. Like, this is the white flag. Like, KD wanted Ime, he didn't get Ime, and now we're hiring Jacques Vaughn, and then it's like we're gonna give him a try, and then if it doesn't work out, KD is gonna request another trade. But since it's been playing out the last 5 games, I felt like, I was totally wrong on that because the vibe, it's kind of like the vibe after they traded Harden, right? Like they got rid of Harden out the locker room and like his, sour disposition. And then everybody started playing like loose and free again. And I feel like, now I don't think they're going to trade him. I think, we're going to get Kyrie back and then going to have to figure out how to like get him back into the fold and get him into this ball movement because it's like Kyrie can slow a game down, and it's like I would rather see the offense that we've been running with Kyrie in it, as opposed to going back to what we were before, which is heavy ISO, and them two guys taking turns, being a focal point.
I think also why I was skeptical about Jacques Vaughn is because in the past couple of years, our defense was trash, right? If you look at last season and also in the playoffs, we couldn't guard anybody in key moments. And Jacques was always touted as the defensive assistant coach, right? So that's why I was skeptical, but I thought like, okay, we were allowing like 120 points per game to start the season with Jacques Vaughn as the assistant defensive, coach of the team. So how can he then be the head coach and our defense is going to be trash? But it's not further from the truth. Our defense has been great since he's been the head coach. So I was wrong. I'm happy to admit it, but that's why I didn't trust it.
We've allowed under 100 points per game in these 4 games that Jacques Vaughn has been coaching.
I know.
I think with last season, because the year before that, even Udoka was our defensive coach. But last season, it was still under the head coaching job of Steve Nash. So Steve is still the one calling out the plays on offense and defense. He's just taking advice from Jock and whatnot. So I think it was just more of an ignorant part of Steve Nash. Because if you look at how we played defense last season compared to how we play defense this season, yes, we also have better defenders, but the coaching is a big part of it. And Jock has been really, really good on the defensive end of the ball.
Yeah. I think something Amari Stoudemire said was crazy. Was like, he was an assistant there last year, and he said that there was no real defensive system in place. Like, if somebody got beat, there was no counter to that motion where guys had to be filling in for whoever, had just gotten beat. And when he said that, it was just like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, huh?
Yeah, that was definitely something.
And he was in the building last year, you know what I mean? And it was like, you can tell that is not the case now. Like, guys know their assignments. And that was the thing. He said when somebody blew an assignment, no one would call them out because there was nothing in place to reference. And I was just like, wow.
Absolutely.
That's wild.
And I think I lost my train of thought here. Continue on. I lost my train of thought. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Kyrie controversies.
Yes.
Everything that's been going on, because that's definitely something we need to do a deep dive into. I think we'll do that and we'll end off this episode, and then we'll continue on to the next one, because we definitely still have a lot to talk about. We've yet to talk about these 4 games with Jacques Vaughn. We've yet to talk about the firing of Steve Nash, and we'll live up to that. We still have some discussion about the whole thing with Kevin Durant and everything that's been going on, and the Cam Thomas coming back to play, and Day'Ron Sharp not really being ready, and I think there's still a lot.
It hurts my heart.
Yeah.
That hurts my heart. I'm such a big Day'Ron guy, man.
Absolutely.
I want Day'Ron to win so bad, man.
He's such a great guy as well. But let's talk about the whole everything about the whole drama and anti-Semitic beliefs, whatever, with the Kyrie Irving for a little bit, because that's definitely something we need to do a deep dive into, because there's been a lot of talk about it, and I've, as of recent, done a lot of research on it. I haven't watched the actual movie yet. I'm definitely going to sit down and watch it and see for myself whatever is going on with it.
I watched it.
You did watch it?
I watched it. I did watch it.
What do you take?
It's a long watch. It's about 3 hours.
Yeah, I saw that.
So here's the thing, right? So there are a group of black people in this world that identify as being Jewish, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've found that out.
Of those people, there are a sect of those people that believe that there is like a whitewashing of what it is to be Jewish and to be of the Hebrew faith, okay? The documentary starts from that premise, and then it goes on to try to take historical facts, biblical references, scientific data to prove that there's been a whitewashing of black people out of Judaism, and the part that gets anti-Semitic is the part that when they start to answer the question why this is happening, right?
Okay.
So the first 2 hours is just like a really fast attempt to take scientific data, historical references, and biblical references to try to make this point, right? And he doesn't always do it well. Like, you can tell the guy's not like, he's not Ken Burns in terms of being a documentarian, right? Like,
no, I've heard some. It should look like a PowerPoint presentation or something like that.
It does, because honestly, it's a book first, right? So he's taking text from his book and then he's, putting it on the screen or whatever. And then he takes like random stock footage that he probably, he probably had like a couple of $100 to buy royalty-free stock footage of black people doing various things, referencing this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be here to tell anyone how they should be offended, right? Like, I don't tell Asians what is offensive to them. I'm not Asian. I'm not going to talk about what Jewish people should be offended by, right?
No, of course not. Of course not.
What I'm going to say, though, is that of the 3 hours of this documentary, like 80% of it is just like a presentation to tie in history with science and data and facts. And then once they start talking about questioning the Holocaust, which I always think is an idiot move because, to be honest, the Germans kept impeccable records about who was there, who lived, who didn't, how they died, all of that.
Absolutely. Like, that's denying the Holocaust happened is, of course, not good.
Yes. No, it's just not. It's not a smart thing to do because there's evidence and data, right? Like
absolutely.
Facts are facts.
And being like me living in Denmark and Joel living in the Netherlands, we're fairly close to it. And
actually live in Germany, but yeah, go on.
Germany, even better.
Even better, right?
But we're fairly close to it. We were both under the dictatorship, whatever you want to call it, of Mr. A.H., as I'll call him. During this wartime and whatnot, and we like from where I live, it's about 15 kilometers from what used to be the border between Germany and Denmark.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just north of the border, or just north of the old border. So I've been, like, not in my lifetime, of course, but like I can go back into photo albums that my grandma has, where she literally has pictures of a British fighter plane that was shot down in a field very close to where she lived, and they had this British pilot housed in the attic for a while they were waiting, or while they were waiting for him to be rescued. So there's definitely stuff, like, we have some history with it, and it's so close to us in Europe with dealing with this whole situation. So I can definitely see why denying the Holocaust is a bad move in general, because of course it happened.
Yeah. But so when I say that to say that, like, the denial of the Holocaust, and then when they get into why this whitewashing has happened, that's where they kind of get into the traditional anti-Semitic tropes. All right, like, they control the media, they control, all of this stuff. Which I'm gonna leave that one. I'm gonna come back to that one. But most of the documentary is just kind of like a history lesson, right? And I can see what Kyrie was drawn to, right? Like, Kyrie is drawn to spiritual faith. He's drawn to ethnic backgrounds and, like, trying to discover who he is. And the first 2.5 hours, I could see Kyrie sitting in his place watching this and is like, exactly, right? Like, oh, this is great. Like, I never knew that. Like, because there were certain things, they talked about the beginning of Judaism and Abraham and all of his sons, and they break down the lineage and which tribes of Israel at the biblical times were black, and where they lived geographically, and where they came from. And I can see what Kyrie was attempting to do when he shared it. I don't think he actually got to the end of it because it's so long.
No,
and he probably shared this link.
It's come out that he didn't actually watch the full movie. So
yes, but when you read the premise of the movie and, like, what it's trying to prove, you can tell that he agrees with that, right? Does he agree with the anti-Semitic hate stuff? Absolutely not. And
no,
I don't think he does himself any justice sometimes with his lack of speaking to the media. Like, he doesn't do himself any favors.
No,
and they kind of bit him in the ass here.
He's not very, very. I don't want to say he's not very good with the mic under him, but sometimes he's had some unfortunate mistakes with a mic and a camera pointed towards him. Yeah.
And I do think that, guys that cover the Nets, who's the guy from ESPN?
Nick Friedel.
Friedel. Yeah, like, he's so antagonistic, and, like, whenever you read his stuff, you can just tell that he does not like Kyrie or the Nets.
No, he
And it's just
and
kind of like he has an agenda. So, you got guys
absolutely.
like that covering the team, and, you can see why Kyrie is very standoffish because it's like, dude, talk about basketball.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we should get Malika Walker back, man. Really, like.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
we also can't like just shit on the media because we also have some very good media members like Christian Winfield
No, no,
and
no.
Scoopy
Yeah,
Robinson.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
definitely some very trustful sources and whatnot that we listen to, and whenever they say stuff, it usually tends out to be the right thing, and they don't go after
Yeah.
our players and what they just want to talk about. Of course, they have their
That's the
stories they
thing.
need to
They don't
cover,
go
and
after the players.
exactly. They don't go at the players. And I had a discussion with this, discussion about this on one of Scoop's posts the other night when someone was coming at Scoop for being part of the media and saying he was part of the problem. When I'm like, no, Brandon has never been that type of guy. Like from the time that I've been following him and from hearing from Saint and others and whatnot, and like actually like doing a deep dive into like what does Scoop do with this? Like not all our media members are as bad as a Nick Friedel. Nick Friedel is definitely not good because he has the agenda towards the Nets, but we also have like I said, Christian Winfield. It's just like one Christian Winfield and Brandon Scooby Robinson are just the two I always know off the top of my head because I really respect what they do, and I really like like we talk to them in spaces and whatnot, and they're always engaged in the community and everything, like with us.
Yeah.
I meant Malika Andrews, by the way, just
Malika
correcting
Andrews.
myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but overall, Dre, so you've seen the documentary. It's come out, as Chris said as well, that he hasn't seen the documentary fully, at least, right? It's only seen parts of the documentary, most
Yep.
likely.
No,
Um,
I believe he literally told K-Dub that because I believe it was Christian Winfield who reported that he hasn't actually seen the full documentary. I know I retweeted it, but I can't remember exactly how it was said or whatever. But I believe he came out and said himself that he hasn't actually watched the full documentary.
yeah, but do you think that the suspension is fair? And do you think that the conditions that has been put upon him, if that's okay or if that's over the top?
I can see
I
from your
mean,
body language you don't think that's okay.
listen, it is definitely over the top. I mean, to tell someone that they need to go back to school as an adult male or even a female, right? Like that's treating them like a child, right? Like you need to go back to school to unlearn what you've learned because, you know, um, what's this guy's name? Nick Cannon had a really good podcast episode where he had this rabbi on, and they were talking about the Kyrie thing,
I
and the
believe it was
rabbi was like,
actually the leader of the what is it called
ADL.
ADL. Yeah, I believe it was him.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
probably right. You're
yeah,
probably right. And he referenced the term buck breaking,
Yes.
and Nick Cannon did, and the guy did not know what that meant. And then when he explained to him what it meant, you could see the guy's whole demeanor change.
yeah.
He was like, "Oh wow!" And then he even took his assessment of the punishment in the situation and was like, "No, I get it now, right?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very hard thing because as a black man in America, you see the rawness of the world and how you're being treated, how you're talked to, how you're marketed to, how you're sold to, right? And it's like there is no consistency with this, right? Because you look at a person like Mel Gibson, who went on many, many anti-Semitic rants and has never apologized to anyone about it, right? He just basically just stopped making films. Like you didn't see the outpour that you see for Kyrie now, right? And it's like there is no consistency when someone who is black and brown goes after and criticizes the Jewish community in any way, the first thing they do is label him an anti-Semite. And it's like the blowback is so fierce. You're seeing it here with Kyrie. Like there are people that said that he would never play in the NBA again. And it's like, what?
It's crazy.
Also accusing him of
It's like,
retiring, or starting to spread
and
rumors of him retiring or whatnot, which was debunked by the Kyrie camp.
yeah, and you got guys like Phil Knight speaking out, and it's just laughable because it's like when it comes to certain groups, right? Like there is a rally that comes around them, right? And it's like, where is Phil Knight for all the other social justice causes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that you're touching upon something there that has bothered me, and that I said in the net spaces during the off season, and most people don't really agree with that. But you know, in my experience, right? I mean, I'm not an American, but I am black, and I know that there are a lot of people in Asia, looking in China, but also Southeast Asia, who aren't that fond of black people, right? It's just the way it is, right? And I feel that the way Joe Tsai, for example, reacts on Twitter towards KD and Kyrie,
Yes.
I feel sometimes that it comes from a place where he doesn't want to accept, consciously or subconsciously, a black person standing up to him like that or doing something that he doesn't like. And I can't prove anything. I don't know Joe Tsai, so I won't be able to tell you if he's racist or not. But I feel it comes from a place that I've experienced myself, with Asian people. And not all Asians are racist. I'm not saying that, so let me just say that. But
Yeah.
I know if you can look at it online, like during COVID, for example, how restaurants in China blocked black people from going there because black people were spreading COVID in China. Think about the irony of that statement, right? So I don't know the way Joe Tsai reacts to Kyrie and talks about forgiveness. You were talking about education, but to me, the way he uses forgiveness when it comes to Kyrie, that doesn't sit right with me that he says it like that, right? I feel that there's something there.
You know, that's very interesting. I've had some of those similar thoughts. And you know, we can kind of go back to what I was talking about before when in terms of like how different things are, right? So like for the most part, I will say that uh, what you've experienced in terms of Asian people, I've experienced it as well, right? Like I grew up in a part of Queens that is the most heavily populated, are some of the most heavily populated zip codes in the world in terms of concentration of Asian people. And
Hmm.
I think that a lot of the times when they come here, they believe they're white adjacent, right? And
Yeah,
they kind of take on the biases of I'm not saying that they're white supremacists, but they're white supremacist ideals that people align themselves with in terms of, oh, they're of an authority over
yes,
people that are black and brown, and that it's okay for them to chastise and point fingers at because you know um, there are certain things that have gone on in this country where like that type of behavior is always encouraged. So it's like I thought it was a really bad move that he went on Twitter first,
yeah,
Yeah, that
right?
was
It was like,
that alone. He should have kept it. They should have kept it in within the organization, and then if something had to come out, like let Woj Shams leave it out there. Don't go on your personal Twitter and tweet about it. Like
exactly,
deal
and it
with
was
it within the
like,
organization.
and I will say this to his defense, it's come out that Kyrie didn't return a text message, right? And it's like, yo, dude, he works for you. Like, order him to come into the building and have a meeting with you. Do not go on Twitter and chastise him like a child without speaking to him and saying the same thing to his face,
yeah,
right? Right? I have a boss. I've had bosses. I've done things that are wrong. I've made mistakes. The boss calls me into the office, gives me a tongue lashing. I take my comeuppance and I keep it moving, right? Or we disagree and we have a dialogue and we have it out.
Yeah,
But
you swallow your pride and you deal with it.
you deal with it, right? Even as the boss, you have to swallow your pride to, and not try to lash out, right?
yeah,
Like the guy went out on Twitter And like the first thing is like 2 days after the movie, and it's like, did you talk to Kyrie first? Like, I don't understand.
Welcome
So
back,
it was
Saint.
very.
Hey, how do I sound? Because I am driving. I don't want to ruin your stream.
Oh no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You're decent.
All right.
It's all right.
How's it?
We're just
We're
talking
just
about
discussing the Kyrie thing
yeah. We just,
currently.
You came just in time.
yeah, Dre actually watched the documentary, so we're just talking about and breaking that down.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen snippets and talked to people that have watched the full thing, but I haven't gotten around to watching it yet.
You got to block 3 hours of your life out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a two-parter for me.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Dre, I want to touch upon what you said, right, about Josiah tweeting about it, that which is silly, and also that it leaking, that Kyrie didn't respond to his text messages. Like, if you go to HR, if Josiah would go to HR and would say like, okay, we need to chastise Kyrie for not replying to text messages, he can't. You don't have to reply to your boss's text message on your private phone. You don't have to. Right, like so, like you said, you could have just go to HSS and say like, "Hey, Kyrie, I need to talk to you," and then Kyrie would have had to talk with him. But you don't have to reply to your boss's text messages on your private phone. You just don't.
No, if you're out of work hours, like.
Or even during work hours, like if it's your
I mean-
private mobile phone, you don't have to answer to anything on that.
But like we live in a new world, right? Like not everybody works at the office anymore. Like there are people that are remote, whatever. And it's like, and let's just be fair. Like your boss texts you, like
You're expected to
reply
reply.
with it. Yes, in a let's say 8 hours, right? Like
Within a certain time frame, yeah.
within a certain time frame, and he should have responded to it. But I mean, like Josiah's the boss. Like call his agent. Let him know that it's mandatory that he shows up for a meeting and have the conversation. Don't run to Twitter. Like
Absolutely.
that seems so millennial, Gen Z. It was just like, what are you doing, dude? Like,
It was a bad move from the beginning. That never should have happened. But we've seen that multiple times from Messiah when he tweets out something about something and
Or did he like that tweet from this Kristen person? I still can't get over that.
no, there's been a lot of bad things going on Twitter, especially with our front office, and it's just the way it's been. But it needs to change. Like some things you just gotta deal with internally. Same with the Boston Celtics situation. The Ime Udoka thing probably should have never came out in the public. They should have just dealt with that internally, and then
why they had a
suspended
press
him-
conference to tell us that they're not going to give us any details was beyond me.
Yeah, like suspend him and give an explanation, a short explanation. Say, all right, this is why we're suspending him. No further details. You don't have to do a press conference. Just release it to Woj or something like that. Let him write a report about it, and that's it.
But the problem about the way things are today, media-wise, is much as there's a lot of things that do get kept in-house, but if it's something quote newsworthy, somebody's going to leak it to somebody, right? And it's like it always puts the organization in a position to have to come out way in front of it as soon as they catch wind that it's going to get out. Often there are threats made like, hey, either you address it or this report's going out or I'm going to go talk to these people. That's what happened with the Ime situation. The Kyrie situation, I feel like, and this has been the common thread I've had an issue with the front office and just Josiah in general. It seems that he has these knee-jerk reactions that he responds in a public way on Twitter before he really communicates with whoever the person the issue is with.
Yeah.
Out of like, oh gee, I can't look, I can't look bad, so I gotta jump out in front of it, and then I'll try to address later. But in the meantime, you kind of
make yourself look bad.
Yeah, you kind of burn a little bit of a bridge with the said player in question. It's
Saint,
like,
what did you say on Twitter? That like, thank God for Clara, the wife.
Yeah.
Oh God, did you ever notice that every time some situation gets solved, either Josiah or the Nets always put Claire right in front Like,
Yep.
like,
Every single
yeah,
time.
Like
like
the trade
we
request
have
this
to know.
offseason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like she has to be the balance in that situation. And I even said, hey, you ought to let Claire Sy handle communications and issues at some level of PR. Like, let her
Because I remember reading you
run
saying
that.
like, is she a partner or
I
like is she
believe
like on the
she's.
board of governors? Because she needs to be. Because
I believe
It should
she's a
Exactly.
be.
vice chairman.
she is vice chairman.
I believe she is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or she should get a bigger role because, just like with the Lakers, right? Like, wasn't it like Genie Buss's brother who got the keys to the kingdom first, and he did a bad job, and Genie took over. Like, I'm not gonna say here if Genie is doing a good job or not because I don't know. I hate the
He at least
Lakers. I'm happy
stabilized
that
it.
they're doing bad, but like maybe Clara should take more of active role, right? Because what Sai is doing as well, how he responded to KD, right? When it leaked that KD wanted, to either be traded or Sean Marks and Steve Nash needed to be fired. He also went to Twitter immediately,
Yeah,
right?
he
Like,
took Twitter immediately to say, I back my front office. Like, there's
yeah,
no reason for that.
yeah. Well,
Do that in silent. Do that within the organization. There's no reason to make that public, because you're just adding fuel to the fire. Then you're just stirring up shit to say it as directly as possible.
But at least like what I'm saying is like have the conversation with said player first and then
yes.
say it. Right? Like don't say it in the media first, say it to them first so that when it does come out, everyone who's pertinent of the conversation has already heard it and there's no surprises. It's just he's a bad owner.
Absolutely.
I know for a fact, and I'm not gonna like name names or even give a hint, but my boy AJ, he does have a look into the organization from the back, like behind the curtain. And the one thing that person has repeatedly, like especially when drama and issues are going on with the organization, the person always seems to bring up in every conversation how there's a massive disconnect between all the different parts. Like, at least communication-wise, especially when things are happening, it's like they're finding out and seeing things, and then they hear something, and they're like, wait a minute, like why isn't this being talked about in a broader sense? So there is a disconnect between conversations in the front office, ownership, organization, and then when it comes to putting that out publicly, there is just it doesn't seem like some places have an established chain of command of like, you can just see how it comes out to the public or when they go public with it, news media wise. It seems like it's been handled where with the Nets, it's like you're constantly getting grenades thrown in there at different angles, and you're like, kind of, wait a minute, you're jumping, like you just said this, and now it's this. It really does, like, especially with the injury aspect of it, it's just you're always guessing, and that is just not a good look when your organization is already in a negative turmoil as far as drama is concerned.
Absolutely. We look really bad. Many times we look really bad in the media, online. Like, not everybody's on the same page. We just look bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember the other day someone was like, I think it was Marks, that he hadn't talked to Kyrie. And I'm like, one, why not? And two, why would you even say that?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
like, why would you let that out?
I think it was asked if he had talked to Kyrie, but
I wouldn't have even answered the question. I would like he's got that Bill Belichick in him where he says a lot to say nothing. Yeah. He does that all the time. Like he's choosing to be honest when he wants to be, and it sends a message.
I think the best way to answer that question would have been something along the lines of that's internal discussions, and I'll keep it to that. Like that's
we're going to continue to have dialogue.
Exactly.
Like
that's internal business. We'll handle it internally. It's not thing that we need to discuss.
No, but I think it's already alluding. I would just say like, we're in an ongoing dialogue.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all you need to say.
But then you get a completely different message. Like when I think it was before yesterday's game, you had multiple players come out and say, "Oh yeah, we talked to Kyrie. He's in great spirits. Like we're excited. We want him back."
Yeah,
they even asked Jock Vaughn. Jock Vaughn's like, "Well, I didn't talk to him." He's like, "But I wasn't really in the head coaching position, so I didn't really think it's my place, but that will probably change. So it's kind of like, again, where is the disconnect, right? People are trying to sell you on drama between players and and in the locker room, and the players are putting out a completely positive message, but you get a completely different, like, just aura, I guess if that's the right word. You just get a different feel when it turns into front office ownership. It's just a completely different vibe.
Yeah, but I think in general, like the reporting, in regards to Kyrie, has been lopsided when it comes to the media, right? Like, I mean, now you're hearing that people are pissed at Kyrie because that one game, before suspension, where he didn't score points in the first half and whatnot, and people say that the players were pissed and it was mutiny from Kyrie, and players don't want him back, and are the Nets better off without Kyrie? It's the same that happened in Boston, right? Like, all the players supposedly hated Kyrie, but we as Nets fans, we've seen the way Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and all the Boston players react when we played the Celtics.
Yeah,
right?
Just as of late with Jaylen Brown coming out and saying from the players union side of things, like, they don't think it's right, and it's Jaylen Brown, his former teammate, coming out and saying this. Like,
the Celtics players don't hate Kyrie, but the media want us to believe that everybody hates Kyrie.
Absolutely, the media want to push the narrative that Kyrie is just a cancer.
Chris, weren't we having that conversation on Twitter? Like, have you ever had someone say Kyrie is a bad teammate?
Yeah, we did have that conversation, and I've never heard anyone say that. All I heard is praise for Kyrie when talking about him as a former teammate or even a current teammate.
Yeah.
So, but of course, the media always want to push the narratives because that's their job, and there's just apparently a bunch of narratives they can push about Kyrie because he's had these unfortunate circumstances that a lot of them he's caused for himself, but there's he's not that bad guy that the media wants him to be. He's just not. But they want to push the narrative that he is that bad guy.
So, Saint, I asked Dre this before you were on, I think. What do you think about the suspension and about the steps you need to take to come back? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's over the top? Because I haven't been in net spaces that often recently. So.
Well, the last thing that we saw, like the 6 steps, like as if I thought was way over the top, and it came across very demeaning.
Breaking.
Yeah, exactly. And however, I will say I do believe there was some level of, if I had to say the word steps, I hate saying the word steps, but I think there were some things Kyrie definitely needed to do as far as like kind of just clarifying himself. Like, I do believe that warrants an explanation to some degree. Unfortunately, it's just with Kyrie, usually it takes him a little bit to kind of really get out there and say what he exactly means, what like we wish he would have done from the beginning. Now, I could understand issuing an apology, which he did. The donation of money just always kind of sounds cheap to me. It's kind of like you're just paying somebody. Yeah, it's like that's like whatever, right? Like, if he wanted to do that on his own, that's one thing. But I could also, like, to some degree, potentially because I did have a conversation. Like, I think it is one of those things that I'm from Jersey, grew up back east, born in the 70s, and the wheelhouse of my life back there was mainly towards like the mid 90s. And I remember a time when things were, between two different communities in New York, things were pretty bad between like the Black Israelites and certain parts of the Jewish community. Like, if you lived out there long enough, you remember these times. And it's like, but I also remember that there is, like, you go all the way back to when Martin Luther King used to march, and there were very much large portions of the Jewish community marching with him hand in hand. And I always felt like there was a missed opportunity for conversation to bridge the divide in some areas of it. So I wouldn't have been opposed because I know there are groups. Like I did talk to some other people that are heavily like involved in the Jewish community back east that say that come from the other side where they're like, hey man, there's people in the community that would love to talk with Kyrie that are not like on an extreme level, and like I even thought that would be okay, but to the point of like having to take sensitivity training, like 2 different types of trainings, and then have to sit down in front of Joe Tsai like as if you're giving a book report to like, well, this is what I learned, and I kind of thought was like ridiculous. But what I was happy to see was that because of the conversation with David Stern and then obviously with Joe Tsai and Claire, was that
David Stern.
Adam Silver.
I'm sorry, Silver. Adam Silver. You see where my head's at?
I know.
Yeah. Old head. You're in the geezer space.
That's the era.
I'm an old head. Yeah. So, but to find out where they actually sat down and talked with him without all that stuff being involved, and they understood what kind of person we all know he is, right? Does he make mistakes? Yes. Does he not clarify at times? Yes. Does he leave open a wide level of interpretation? Yes. But once you sit down with him and you talk with him, you understand where he's coming from. So I'm happy they did that. I don't think those, quote, 6 things get done because I do think there is an understanding, which is nice to see, because I think the fact that a lot of people pushed back from players to players union, other people with strong voices, I think finally said something like, hey, yeah, he messed up, but this is over the top. Yeah. And I'm glad that happened. Do I wish Kyrie would have came out and issued that statement like he did on Instagram from the beginning? I wish, because it would have solved so many problems, but
he let it go on way too long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if that's the area where, and that's the thing, and I'll say this, I'm not going to say where I heard it from. Actually, no, I can say it. I was on with Scoop B yesterday doing a Spotify green room, and if people don't know, like Scoop is very connected to Kyrie's camp. I've seen numerous interactions to know that it's true and believe like when he speaks on it. And one of the things he said on his green room yesterday that took me back was he said that Kyrie didn't even watch the full documentary.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about that as well.
Yeah, and I was like, what? Like, so did Kyrie maybe see some of the issues that were in question? Who knows?
What we talked about earlier, we talked about that earlier, and we're like, we could see where he would share it because of the synopsises of the movie and what it breaks down. It really spoke to him, right? Not the anti-Semitic parts and, the Holocaust denial, but you can see where he wanted to share that and have that understanding.
I 100% agree, because the books are slightly a little rougher than the actual movie and the contents in it. I kind of look at the movie as a Disney version compared to the books, from what I understand, but I could easily see him not fully having the full picture and tweeting it out, because there is a conversation in there that is worth having that has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. So I can understand it. I mean, it's just an unfortunate situation all around, basically.
It is, and let's be honest. Like I think when he refused sort of to unequivocally apologize the first time, I think that was a little bit of his pride speaking as well. But then I also think it cost us Ime, right? Like, because I really think that Adam Silver told the Nets like, you can't hire Ime right now, and I do think it cost us Ime, and maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Who knows?
I don't agree on that. I don't think Kyrie cost us Ime. I think Ime cost us Ime. I think that situation.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, it could be. It could be a mix of both.
It could be.
We talked about Clara. We talked about Clara earlier and her having a voice in the organization, and just the nature of what Ime's infractions were. To have that firestorm of that coming in, and to have that be the conversation is, it would have been a lot more. And like he said, it's more on Ime than it is on Kyrie.
Well,
Fair.
indirectly, I
Absolutely,
could
but
say, yeah.
I do-
Indirectly, I could say it did, yeah.
I do believe it was a mix of both. Of course, the whole situation with Ime Udoka and people off the front office and people that work for the team came out and said we weren't comfortable with this hire and whatnot. That also that also partnering with the whole Kyrie situation that was going on at the same time. I believe it's a mix of both, but mostly on the standalone side from Ime Udoka with everything that was going on and members of the front office and members of the team, not necessarily the team directly, but the people that worked for the team. I think it was mostly because of that.
Hey guys, I got to jump off. Okay, I'll try and jump back in before the game comes on.
Absolutely, we're happy to have you on, bro.
Thank you.
Have a good
Talk to
one,
you guys
Dre.
later, Nick.
But with that, I think we're gonna end off this episode, and we'll start the next episode up right after. So we're gonna finish off the Kyrie conversation here. We might do a deep dive into it again once he comes back. We don't know that yet, but we have been live for an hour and 15 minutes now. So I think that's a good episode for now. And yeah, like I said, we'll hop right back into it, and we'll talk expectations for the season and whatnot coming up on the next episode.